Good afternoon. I'm Kevin Walker with the Overland Park Chamber of Commerce. I'm here with Chris Croft, who is currently representing the 8th District in the Kansas House of Representatives, a position he has held since 2019. He is retired from the United States Army, where he served 30-plus years and reached the rank of colonel. He's a small business owner, a board member for the American Fallen Warrior Memorial Foundation, and several other organizations. Chris, welcome.
Thanks for having me here today.
Anything you'd like to tell us about yourself before we get started?
Well, again, like I said, thanks for having me. I appreciate the opportunity to be in front of you today and talk to everybody. You've already covered my bio, and that was there are a few changes in there, but that's all right. Really, for me, as I looked at this, I'm so humbled by the opportunity to be able to serve the people of the 8th District. As we leave the military, and as I left after 30 years, as you mentioned, you leave a community and you try to find another community. And I was so fortunate to find this community. The community that I live in, the community of the 8th District, the community of the legislature, really welcomed me in. And I tell you, it was so refreshing to have that after leaving, because the fear of leaving your community as I walked out. And then as you look back at all the things I had in the military, where they teach you how to identify problems, they teach you how to build teams, they teach you how to come together as a team to identify solutions, and then put a plan together to solve those. And then when you're done with it, you go back and look at it and say, how do I do that better? So, that whole process has benefited me in this whole last 4 years of doing this at the Capitol. And so, again, I'm just very appreciative of the opportunity to be in this community and continue to serve the people.
Wonderful. How about we dig in with some questions
Sure.
then?
All right.
Let's start, as a candidate, what are your top 3 policy issues?
So the top 3 policy concerns that I have right now, or issues that I have, are the cost of living. And as you look at it, airfare prices have gone up, electricity has gone up, gas has gone up 18%. But the one for me, the other day I was at the grocery store and I looked through and I was like, wow, these things are pretty expensive. Eggs were 50% higher than what I bought them at last time. And then I noticed the carts around me, where it used to seem like all the carts were full, all of them are about half full. And people are having to buy very consciously about what they're doing. And so you could tell it's impacting folks. So for me, that's very concerning, and I want to make sure we can do something about that as we move forward. I want to create an environment instead of the cost of living, it's about the economy is the first part. Cost of living is one aspect of that. Then the second part of that is creating an environment for business growth. We are number 1 and number 2 in many categories, as you know, on business growth, bringing new businesses to Kansas, but we're 49 and 50 in the same categories or many other ones that say, we're bad about keeping our mature businesses. Those are the businesses we want to keep. Ones that have already been here and established in our community, we'd like to keep them. And we just need to recognize that all business is essential, and how do we grow that? But also part of the economy is the workforce development. We've got to do something there. Bring more people to Kansas. We've got to keep people in Kansas. But we also need to do some workforce alignment, and I'm sure we're going to talk a bit more about that later. My second point is education, funding it fully, parental involvement, as well as some other opportunities for education, linking public and private partnerships, the schools and the businesses, and how do we do that. And then the third thing, my third topic, is just getting results. I want to make sure we focus on that, get rid of all the partisanship and everything else, stop the games, let's improve our government, let's get things done for the people. So that's my top 3.
Okay. Some of the things you mentioned certainly relate to our tax policy. So what are your views on our state tax policy, and be as specific as you can?
Okay, all right. I served on the tax committee my first 2 years, and that was quite interesting because at the first I really didn't know a whole lot about it. And so going through this has been very beneficial. But what you don't realize is we're one of the highest tax states in the country. And I'm very concerned about how we're taxing our retirement incomes, how we're taxing our property, and then the sales tax. So those are the 3 things that we'll talk about. One, remember I wrote the bill on Social Security. You and I talked about that before, about how we try to take it over a 3-year period. I think at the time there were 13 states that did tax Social Security, and we were one of them. I think it's down to 12 now, with West Virginia now out of it. But we've got to do that. We've got to figure that out. And what was fun about that whole bill was we get to sit in a room and talk to everybody and have the entire committee come up with a solution. And then, unfortunately, we just ran out of time and couldn't get through the process. And then I wasn't on the committee anymore, so I don't know where it's at, but we're going to continue to work that problem. But I'm a big believer in removing that tax, and I know you've heard that on the national or the state level with the governor's race talking about these things, so I'm sure we're going to do something. As for property taxes, I wrote a bill to freeze it. Now, the reason it says freeze, it freezes through a rebate for seniors. So when you become a senior, I wanted to freeze your property tax. The challenge you have is you can't just say, oh, it's not going to go anywhere just because it's not constitutional. So the way you have to do it is work it with a rebate process. We did that. I think we're going to come back and reassess that process and try to get after that one again. Then I wrote a bill on mediation. So you know we have our home valuations and you want to appeal it. But it costs you money to appeal it. You have to go to small claims court and all the other stuff, and it's just a hassle. And I wrote a bill about mediation. I talked to Senator Tyson about it. We had it up on the queue last time. It'll probably come back on the queue this time. I want to make sure we get after that. But we also did increase residential property tax exemptions from $20,000 to $40,000. Created a property tax refund for senior citizen disabled veterans. So I'm really happy about that. As far as sales tax goes, all right, so I think we need a complete relook at our sales tax and how we do taxes across this state. Now, the governor did that. She did it was a good review, I thought, but things have changed in the 3 years since she did that study. And I think we need to go back, look at, but this time, we actually need to come up with a game plan for implementation. Just having the study is one thing, but now we got to put it in place. And I think that's kind of the important part we need to go. We are one of the top 5 outbound states in the country. So you go, well, why does that matter? Because, you know, less people. But for me, if you have less people, you have less of a base for taxes. But you know, the other thing is, because you know I did the redistricting, we possibly will lose a House seat at the U.S. level next time. That's a problem. We can't afford this. We're already only 8 years, almost 7 years away from the next census. We've got to do something about this and turn things around. We must, though, be careful that we're not making tax cuts the first thing. We've got to get government spending under control. You know, in the last 4 years, we've gone from number 5 in the state employees per capita to number 2 in the nation. That's going the wrong direction. We need to go the other direction. That becomes an anchor against our ability to cut expenses and other things.
Okay. Let's talk about education just a little bit. What are your views on K through 12 education funding and accessibility?
Yeah, no, we're sorry. So K through 12 spending. Okay, so I support funding and fully funding education. I have done that since I've been in the Capitol. I want to prioritize the academic achievement for the teachers, parents, and students working together as a team. It seems like there's this, one of those 3 is left out, but it's a triad that has to be together in this process. I am very concerned when I walk the district and I'm talking, and I continually hear from teachers about how much they have to pay out of their pocket for school supplies. And then you hear from parents about how they're having to pay out of their school supplies. Look, we gave a lot of money. We fully funded. We did what we were supposed to do, and we didn't put strings attached. We let the local school board do their thing. And yet we still have the same problem. But also at the same time, we have unencumbered funds that have gone through the roof, and that's money that they can spend that we have appropriated for them. They didn't spend in the years, and now they can spend it on anything they want to. If they really want to do it on that. So since we can't do that and didn't do that, then we created a bill last year. We gave them a tax credit to the teachers for anything they spend on school supplies, because that's something we can do for them. So we're trying to do what we can for the teachers. We need our local school boards to do their thing for the teachers and for the students and make sure we get after that. I did hear some concerns, though. I just want to address this about open enrollment. So I've heard this in other venues. I did support open enrollment, but what I supported also was the change that was made to allow the school boards to say no. So you have somebody that's struggling in another area, wants to come into our school zones, but if there's no room, they can't come. If there is room, the school board gets to decide to let them in. That's what we want. We want to give these children the opportunity to excel. So as the example of that would be, so let's say we have a couple of really good teachers that come into our area. We don't want to let them get away. So we hire them. You have a little bit more teacher ratio than you need. You can allow for a couple of years other kids to come in, and then when we see our growth happening in certain areas, which we're seeing rapidly across our area, the kids are done with that process, the new kids come in, and we've retained those teachers. I see this as a win-win. I wanted to make sure that the school boards had the opportunity to say no, and they do. So I'm very supportive.
Let's shift gears a little bit to economic development. So, what type of economic development policies do you support to encourage job growth and business expansion in Kansas?
Okay, so pardon me. I already mentioned earlier that we're number 1 and number 2 in bringing new businesses. And then number 49 and 50 in the ones that have been here for a while, they've already received the benefits, and then they go off and go somewhere else. I mean, look, I personally don't like incentives at all. I would rather it just be a straight up head-to-head competition and we win. Look, who wouldn't want to be in this place? We have great schools, we have great infrastructure, we have good cost of living here. 86 cents equals $1 anywhere else. It's just a great environment. The people are wonderful. That's why we retired here. I think straight up we win every time. But let's be real. It's not, there is incentives that are out there. It is a competition, and we are going to have to do something about it. So I think, and I felt this way, and you and I have talked many times about this, that we need a toolkit of things that the executive branch can use to bring businesses here. The Commerce Department and others. We don't need to be running in and going, hey, with our hair on fire trying to solve a problem at the last second. We need to think about this thing and put out real thought-provoking or gone through the process of thinking about this and making sure it's a good product, right? So I just think that's something we need to do. And I'll tell you, talking to some other folks out there, some of our residents, they would actually like to invest in some of these opportunities. Why are we letting it go into a fund and let it go through a developer and everything else? Some of our own citizens would like to reinvest in our own communities. So I think there's an opportunity here that we need to really look at getting after a series of tools, and I look forward to having that conversation with you and many others as we've already started that process. As you know, I also wrote a bipartisan bill on occupational licensing, which I think is being helpful, but now we've got to make sure it's implemented. That's the rules and the regs and everything else as we go through that process. And I'm working on something right now with the Futures Caucus and some others on a central one-stop shop for entrepreneurship within the Department of Commerce. So I'm really excited about that one. That one's been kind of going along, and I really believe in this business growth, but what's important to it is actually the workforce development.
Well, and that's a great segue into the next question about, what are your thoughts on how you would grow and develop the state's workforce?
Well, that is a really important question, right? So as we've gone through this, we do hear a lot of talk about growing businesses. We don't hear a lot of talk about how do we grow the workforce. We think it's just kind of magically going to happen if the job's there, all of a sudden people will show up. So as I've traveled around not just the state, but I've also gone outside of our state. Because what you want to understand is how do we grow the people coming in and the people in, right? So we got two different things we have to work on. So when you go out to everybody else, what do they hear? Well, they've heard for years, that we don't have this or we don't have that. So then you hear the New York City mayor say, we don't have a brand. Well, let's think about that. What kind of brand are the people seeing of us? They hear it's a flyover state, it's this. Man, this state is a great state. It is an incredible place to be. We've got to sell this state to the people that are out there and convince them that they really want to be here and not where they are. The grass is greener here, and we know it's greener, and that's where they need to come. But I've also started doing some other things. So I'm working with the Heartland Black Chamber, with the Hispanic Chamber of Greater Kansas City, working with the Kansas City Chamber, you guys, and some other chambers, in the Olathe Chamber, as we're trying to have roundtables and talk about that. Your roundtable you had here was extremely enlightening. But it's also the same talk we've heard all around the state, right? We've heard about, hey, we've got a problem with childcare. Well, as you look at that, you go, well, why is there a problem with childcare? Well, the rules and regulations have restricted childcare facilities from being able to do what they used to do. So why is that way? Well, the only way we're going to fix that is come to some specific language in statute that's going to fix it. So we've got to come up, we've got to look at that. And I know many people are doing that, as you had already pointed out in some of it. The other thing also is working with businesses and community colleges and universities to try to create a job program. So they come into the school, they intern in the summers at the job, and then they keep doing that, and they get a scholarship through that process with the agreement that they stay in the state for 5 years following. And if they do that, then their school's paid for, and we eliminate that debt. I really believe in that program. My son actually went through something like that. I've talked to many of the engineering, the STEM firm, the STEM, I want to say STEAM, it is STEAM, esteemed organizations to talk about how they could help partner with the state to come up with a program. We're not big enough to do it one or the other, but we are big enough to do it as a partnership. And so I like that. I also think we have a problem with workforce alignment. The workforce alignment issue is somebody sitting there working at a job and wants to work at this job. It requires a little bit more education, but they don't have time to get there. They don't have the money to do it. I talked to the Western Governors University and many other universities coming up with programs where they're going to help them do that online and competency-based, so we can move people to the jobs where they're best suited, not for the jobs they happen to be in. So those are some of the very specific things that I want to work on.
You mentioned a couple times in that answer, higher education, and so I want to ask you about the state's role with respect to ensuring access and affordability of post-secondary education.
So, at the root of it, our education, primary and secondary, brings about opportunities, right? And we need to make sure that our kids have those opportunities available to them. We do have good schools here. We do have good secondary education. Even now they're actually pretty good in football too, so we're enjoying some of that thing. But we do need these tools to also get after the workforce, right? We need it to be focused on some of those things. It's not just creating a degree to have a degree. It's about critical thinking. It's about giving the tools necessary to do those jobs that we need to have done. And I do believe that we have a very important role in that process. I do believe like I said before, we got to fund these programs, but we need to fund to make sure they're done in the right ways.
I have a couple of questions related to the realm of healthcare. The first one is, what do you believe the takeaways for state lawmakers should be from the COVID-19 pandemic experience that we've all lived through?
Yeah, interesting times with that. Having been in the military for 30 years, we had a lot of programs, a lot of opportunities where we would have study groups that would sit down and discuss certain things. And actually a pandemic was one of the things we talked about. And so when you started seeing the military's response, you could see that in some of the war games and the planning things that they'd gone through. I don't think clearly we had done that. We've got some pretty serious things we got to work our way through, and we got to think our way through. But what was really exciting, or not exciting, encouraging is probably a better word, was the extraordinary efforts of some extraordinary people, right? It's just stepping out there and doing things and helping others and taking care of the team. And that, to me, is, again, why to be in Kansas. Kansas just has people that care about others, and I enjoyed that. But now looking at that, what we need to do is we need to take a bipartisan look. We need to get a team together, not just the legislators. We need to get a team of some business leaders, chambers, and executive branch side, judiciary branch, and all sit down and go, okay, let's get in a room and let's go, okay, what happened? Number one, what did we see happen? And record all of what we saw happening. Because there was so much happening in different areas, not everybody can see it all. I think we need to get that out there. And then we need to come up with solutions to those problems, or potential solutions that we can do, and record those things. But we need to record the things that we need to improve on and the things that actually did really well. So that way we have both of those things, and we can study those things. If we don't study what mistakes we made, then we didn't learn. And if we didn't learn, then we're bound to make that same mistake again. So COVID's given us an opportunity. We're on the other side of it now. Let's get back. Let's focus on what we have to do. Let's come up with a plan. Let's make this state great. I mean, that's just where we have to go. And I mean, a great state's already great, but I mean, just how do we make it better? And that's what I think COVID's done for us.
I want to look at healthcare a little more broadly now. And so what are your views on healthcare policy in general and Medicaid expansion specifically?
So I'm really focused on healthcare innovations is what I'm after. I like to see an increase to preventative care, to doctors, access to doctors, and reduce costs. So when I was in college, my wife and I both worked at a wellness center, where we focused on how do you take care of people that are well and keep them well. And I think we need to get back to some of that and say, okay, it's not just about smoking cessation, it's about where are you at and how do we keep you there? I think that's very important that we go down that path. We did pass the APRN bill to increase access. We passed a bill where pharmacies can do tests and give some treatments. We'd like to expand that a little more. I know there's some other people that want to do that. I think that's important. I want to we're working on a proviso to increase the number of residency and with the stipulation that they must stay in the state after they graduate. So that, but then also in that, they have to have a certain percentage of their patients to be Medicaid patients. Now something like that actually increases the number of doctors available to folks on Medicaid, not takes it away. That's actually what I really want to do. I've also held a health fair. We did that last spring, and we had a lot of interesting opportunities for people to come in. We offered vaccine shots and just general looks from doctors. This time what we're working on is we've got a mobile dental clinic coming in that will give some initial analysis. Then we have also mammograms, we have mobile veterans that we've committed so far. So we're still working to get this finalized, but that's something we're working on. And I think I'm excited to see how we do this for the community.
You know, in Topeka, there's always a debate about local control and how control over decision-making is divided between the legislature and local governments, including school boards, is, you know, on taxation, economic development, education. It's always a matter of debate. So what are your views on that issue?
Well, kind of going to be a short answer. I support local control. I mean, that's the bottom line. I do believe that, you know, the federal government gives us some boundaries on certain things. I think the state gives the local areas some boundaries, and we let them do their job, do what they have to do, as well as they do that downward. So I'm supportive of local control.
Okay. And the last question I have for you, what do you believe most distinguishes you from your opponent in the race?
Okay, all right. I will tell you, I mean, she's had a lot of service. I've had a lot of service. I feel like my service to the nation has had me going where the nation called me to go, right? And it's just different. It's all it is. So that's what you asked me about. I've had experiences from around the world. I've been in 22 different countries, been in 49 different states. So I've seen a lot, experienced a lot. And I just think that those experiences help me to do my job and what I've been doing. And I think it's been of benefit to me, what the Army's taught me, what all these other experiences and how we're doing. And also, by the way, I've been in the state 10 years now. So most people think I just moved here, but I've actually lived in this state for the last 10 years. Lived in this area for 10 years. So it's not like I haven't been here. And I really enjoy this area. My wife, it's become our home, and we absolutely love where we're at.
Well, before I wrap it up, I just want to give you a chance to offer any final thoughts or make any comments that we haven't touched on already.
Yeah, well, you know, thanks. I appreciate you again for making time for me to be here today. I've really enjoyed the opportunity to get results for the people, but I'll tell you, I really think it's important that we focus on results and not focus on partisanship. This cutting each other down is just unnecessary. We have got to figure out a way to start treating people with dignity and respect. And I'm going to come back to that in a second. What I have enjoyed the fact that I did write the food sales tax bill 4 years ago. It was vetoed, that's fine. We would be done with food sales tax right now. This is where politics got involved, and I understand that process. But the fact of the matter is, this food sales tax is just one step that needs to go away in the sales tax process. The whole thing needs to be relooked. How we go about all this stuff. It's just an awfully big bill, and to take that bill all at one shot can hurt. And we've really got to make sure we're doing the right thing, especially with the unknown future where we're going. As we've talked about, cost of living is going up. We've got to figure out, can we manage that? We've got to take a long-term approach to it. I did get the occupational licensing done, bipartisan bill. It took 2 years. As you know, you suffered with me, but it was good. And I appreciate, I learned so much in that process and how to get things done. And so I'm just proud to have been able to do that. The lowering of drug costs, we did some stuff with the PBMs to make it more transparent. That's step one. We're going to look at some other things. We talked about the pharmacies. I think, you know, I talked to a constituent the other day about, you know, step therapy for MS patients. You know, there's a lot of things we've got to work on here, and just having bumper sticker bills doesn't solve the problem. Let's find the problem and solve the problem. And I don't disagree with where she's at. We just got to figure out how to do it, right? And we'll go there. But the one that I really want to talk about for a second, if that's all right. You can give me the second? All right. Are the maps. So, you know, I was responsible for I was the chair for redistricting. We had a great team. Both sides came in, they talked things through. I was told through the entire process that we would never get this done. I was told it would never get approved and the courts were going to have to draw these maps. So I don't know if they were trying to motivate me or if they were just trying to tell me how to do it. But at the end of the day, what we decided to do was call everybody into the room. It was a room just like this. You know, you had TV screen in here and said, okay, here's your map. Let's talk about it. What do you want to do? What do you want to see? What do your constituents say? And then we went around the state and visited 25 different stops. Many of them were, in fact, the majority were after 5 p.m., which is what we were asked to do. Several of them were virtual, so that way anybody around the state could do this at any time. We did not restrict anybody. I think some of those things were kind of unique. They hadn't been done before, and I hope they set the example of way to go before. Here's the thing, the result was what? The maps, our House maps passed 112 to 10. Highest margin, highest vote margin ever in the history of this state. Man, that felt really good to me. Because I think what it shows everybody is that we can in fact work together, that this state can do that and serves as an example for everybody. That when you do treat people with dignity and respect, understand that we're not going to agree on everything. You know, you and I don't agree on everything, but that's okay. The fact of the matter is, we just treat each other with dignity and respect and move on and respect what you have to say, but respect that we disagree on some things, and then we move from that to the next thing. So.
Well, Chris, we appreciate you taking time to be here, and as always, we want to thank you for serving the state. We want to thank you for your willingness to put your name on that line and run again.
Yeah.
And I just want to remind everybody that advance voting begins on Saturday, October 22nd, and Election Day is Tuesday, November 8th.
If I could say one last thing I forgot, I'm sorry, and I know you didn't, I was trying to get your attention. You know, I do think we're at a serious time, that we need serious people. I believe I'm that serious person for this district, and I just ask for your vote on it.
Well, with that, we'll call it an interview. Thank you, Chris.
Thanks, sir.